First here at 5 o'clock, the political war between Governor Newsom and President Trump appears to be entering uncharted territory. Newsom now claims President Trump has directed the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate both him and his wife, Jennifer Newsom, an allegation that, if true, would mark a dramatic escalation in the years-long feud between the two political rivals. Thanks for joining us tonight. For Fox 40 News at 5, I'm Nikki Lorenzo.
And I'm Eric Harriman. The governor made the claim on a social media post accusing the president of targeting his family. Fox 40 Capitol reporter Eitan Wallace is live with more from Governor Newsom, as the governor is now vowing to defend himself. And if anything, Eitan, what are we hearing from the Trump administration related to all of this?
Well, Eric and Nikki, still a lot of murkiness from the Trump administration on this. In fact, details of this apparent investigation, a lot of those details are still murky, but here's what we do know. Governor Gavin Newsom says federal investigators have reached out to those in his inner circle, including relatives, friends, and even former employees, all part of an apparent investigation he says is politically motivated. He says he and his wife are innocent.
Donald Trump picked the wrong target. We have nothing to hide.
California Governor Gavin Newsom with that message Monday, as he claimed President Donald Trump has instructed the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate Newsom and Newsom's wife, California first partner Jennifer Newsom. The governor not specifying what he and his wife may be under investigation for, but he did say federal investigators have already started to question people in Newsom's orbit.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents.
The U.S. Department of Justice declined to comment, but a source familiar with the investigation said the U.S. DOJ actually for the last year has had multiple investigations ongoing into the Newsoms, including one related to Newsom's wife and her taxes, and another related to Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, and potentially current staff members. The source added the investigations originated through whistleblowers and local sources in California. Newsom claiming any investigation into him is politically motivated.
Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president.
But Newsom says he especially takes issue with any investigation into his wife.
I've learned that his campaign has reached my own home. To get me, he's coming after my wife, Jen, a public servant, a woman who's dedicated her life to supporting women and girls. Someone who has done nothing wrong.
In a statement, Jennifer Newsom said, quote, "There are clearly no boundaries to what Donald Trump will do to get his way or to challenge those who get in his way." It comes after the federal government last year indicted Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, on a slew of corruption charges. She ultimately pled guilty to 3 of the charges involving a scheme to illegally divert campaign funds from a dormant campaign account belonging to former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary and California Attorney General Javier Becerra. As part of her guilty plea, Williamson admitted to making false statements to investigators. Becerra, who's now running for governor, has not been implicated in that case, and neither has Newsom. Williamson's attorney alleged investigators first tried to investigate Newsom and asked Williamson if she knew of any wrongdoing. She said she did not.
I think that's where it started.
That was the original inquiry.
As for any action we could see next into the apparent investigation into the Newsoms,
well, from what we understand, it's in the early stages, trying to perhaps dig up information, or what people often refer to as a fishing expedition, posing questions to see if they might come across something.
And just within the last literally 3 minutes here, Nikki and Eric, the Newsom administration filed a Freedom of Information Act request seeking more records into this from the Trump administration and the U.S. Department of Justice. Meantime, we did reach out to the White House to ask what President Trump knows about this and his reaction to it, but a White House spokesperson referred us to the DOJ, who had no comment. Reporting live here at the state capitol, covering local news that matters, Eitan Wallace, Fox 40 News.
All right, Eitan, thanks so much.